So yeah, look, I'm Luis Miguel Aleixo. I'm the Managing Director of BRIK BC projects with Tokenization-16June2022 properties here in Australia, Brisbane, Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast, to be specific in terms of the cities we're focusing on. We're tokenizing residential A-class real estate. So basically, we started on Ethereum blockchain, and then we switched to the RavenCoin blockchain, which I'll go through a few details about that in terms of our journey. But yeah, Jake, from you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jake Menard. I am Chief Financial Officer of RenewalBlocks. We recently minted our security tokens through a restricted asset on the RavenCoin blockchain. These security tokens are going to be representing your ownership of a renewable energy Bitcoin mining company based in the UK. If you want to view the minting of the token on the RavenCoin blockchain, a pinned tweet above does have that video linked. It's stored on RavenCoin IPFS. So you can definitely go view that. It's only a short 10-minute video. I am also project manager of Dwell Homes. We are a custom home building company in Illinois, which is in the Midwest U.S. We are looking to tokenize, we're either looking to tokenize two things, either Dwell itself as a company or properties within a rental community. We are in the process of acquiring some property in order to start building these rental properties, these homes, and hopefully more updates will be coming on that over the next few months as we, acquire these properties.
Fantastic, thank you, Jake. And Tron, as I said, we couldn't have any better person in terms of when it comes to RavenCoin chain than Tron Black. So I asked Tron to make himself available, and I'm really thankful, as I said before, that he's taken some time out of his trip at the moment to make himself available. So again, Tron is the co-founder and also the lead developer for the RavenCoin chain, but I'll let him sort of give his intro and a bit of background. Tron, thank you.
Oh, you're too kind. So I was just happened to be at the right place at the right time to help Bruce Fenton, who's now running for Congress and U.S. Congress from the state of New Hampshire. Helped him co-write the white paper for RavenCoin, and in general it uses the securest code that existed at the time, which was Bitcoin, and we built the ability to create your own asset. And along with that, added some interesting features that allow you to have a unique name, put in metadata that's immutable, and things like that. So really the usage of this, when BRIK BC is doing and what Jake's doing with RenewalBlocks, is kind of the culmination of kind of what this project was designed for. It was designed for being able to create tokens that represent real world assets, real world art, real world equity, things like that. And of course, along the way, learned a whole bunch about kind of the U.S. legal system and some other countries' legal systems on how difficult sometimes that is and how challenging it is. It's getting easier and a little bit more clarity. But been very honored to be a part of this project and met amazing people along the way.
Fantastic, thank you, Tron. We will go some deep probings from your perspective. So we'll as we go through this session here. But thank you for that intro. LSJ's he's been around the community for a long time, the RavenCoin community. He does projects himself. He helps out people who are coming into the RavenCoin blockchain from all aspects, as far as NFTs, real estate, and you name it. He's involved in trying to help people. So, LSJ, just a bit of intro of you in terms of the things you're involved
in. Yeah, thank you. So there's two sides to every coin, personal and professional. So for me, RavenCoin is very much on the personal side, but my professional side does leak over occasionally. So for me personally, RavenCoin for me just represents really, really, really good ownership. The same as Bitcoin, because it's got the same principles and the same fundamental strengths. So for me, that's really important personally. And just with my history, I came from a third world country. That's where I grew up. And then I moved to a first world country, and seeing the differences and stuff when I was growing up compared to where I gained my working experience, etc., really left some impressions on me on how things could be done better and improved on. And I think RavenCoin and Bitcoin can massively help the whole world. Just people don't really know about it yet. Professionally, I'm an engineer and project manager running national M&E contractors and major projects for various main contractors, doing all sorts of things like process water treatment works, but it like literally runs the gamut. I do specialize in electrical engineering though, so yeah, that's the quick version.
Thank you, LSJ. Again, we will probing you a few things as we go along, but thank you for that intro. Look, in terms of the reason we decided to have this session was from some of the conversation I've been having with people over the last sort of few weeks about what chain we're tokenizing on in terms of our real estate properties from a BRIK perspective and why and so forth, and what was our journey. So I think it was only appropriate to invite a few people to this session. Obviously, people that couldn't make it, they'll hear the recording. But again, just going through why would you choose Ravencoin blockchain? And probably if I could just sort of make it very short in terms of our experience from a BRIK perspective, because our journey, we are looked after by DigiShares, so they created our platform, our property tokens platform, and they maintain our platform. And again, back when we started, Ethereum was the only choice back then, so we went down the rabbit hole of the Ethereum and go through the whole experience. And what we sort of found was sort of from October last year, when we then the platform was built, we were obviously trying to mint our BRIK wallet token series. It was very challenging because with gas fees, and gas fees went from when we were planning the whole project, it was going to be sort of $500 thereabouts early on in the year, to then sort of get to October where we were counting $28,000 in gas fees to be to mint our 40,000 BRIK wallet tokens. So again, we sort of just waited until it sort of went down a bit. And again, look, the thing is, we're a startup, so basically, again, our budgets are very limited. So this is all our money. This is my money and my co-founder's money that's we're pouring into it. So again, the budgets are critical in terms of when you're starting a new project. So again, we were conscious in terms of the gas fees, given that's something that could be obviously not controlled, but it could be managed in terms of waiting for the right timing of it. So we were constantly getting hit up with $28,000 as we were trying to mint the BRIK wallet token series on the Ethereum blockchain. So we just waited, and literally it was the day before Christmas. For some reason or other, we got the message from DigiShares, the guys that the team that looks after us, said you need to go on there right now because the gas fees dropped some really dramatically. Anyway, we minted it to the day before Christmas for $800, which was a massive difference from $28,000. So we then started sort of looking at deep in terms of the problems and ongoing problems and going forward with gas fees, and obviously to be able to even to obviously then to buy and sell on our secondary market was going to be major issues in terms of people to buy and sell, and the Ethereum gas fees involved and so forth. So we basically were looking, and the guys at the time said, have you heard of Ravencoin? Because just at that time, DigiShares had introduced Ravencoin blockchain to their offerings to their clients where they were minting their tokens on. So then obviously they had Ethereum, then they introduced Ravencoin. And during that process where we're trying to mint, they did mention Ravencoin, which I went down and sort of done some research and so forth. But I kept saying to the guys, no, it's got to look. I can't go to another chain because again, everybody knows Ethereum. Everybody trusts the Ethereum blockchain. No, don't give me other bullshit about other chains. We need to focus on the Ethereum. And basically that journey basically led us to once we minted it, we saw it as a major problem. So we then, as I said, we started looking at Ravencoin blockchain and research and talked to a few people and so forth. And we basically made the decision. We were just too far in terms of documentation, legals and so forth to change that first one, BRIK wallet, to Ravencoin. That we're just too far into it. So we made a decision then to, given the problems that how do we address these problems, and Ravencoin for us basically addressed all the problems, not just gas fees, community, all the things that in terms of what Ravencoin brings, and obviously been purposely built for tokenized assets, which obviously we'll go into deep about that as to the whys and so forth. But from our perspective, we made the decision to switch to the Ravencoin blockchain from our second property token series onwards. And again, talking to people over the last few weeks, it's been the same. It's been the same feedback that I've been getting, is that we considered Ravencoin because we switched because these are the reasons. And I've had the same encounters only just a few days ago. I said, and basically the thing was, now we need to do Ethereum because everybody knows Ethereum. Everybody trusts Ethereum. It's known in terms of being smart contracts and so forth and so forth. And I guess that's been our journey. So we basically made a switch, and we're going to be using Ravencoin from the second series onwards and indefinitely, because again, of all the things that we know Ravencoin brings to us, Ravencoin blockchain brings to us what we're trying to achieve. But I guess it was. Again, through that experience, that it changed my mind. I was so adamant that it was Ethereum, but again, it's again, you got to be open-minded in terms of to address, because we're so early in blockchain. There's always going to be new things popping up, so you just need to be kept. Just remind, need to be kept open-minded. So, but in terms of from you, Tron, obviously you created the blockchain with your team at Ravencoin, and I guess when you guys were still looking at obviously the Bitcoin as the fundamentals to start the chain, there's been the fork of Bitcoin, and to obviously to create a platform that was purposely built to tokenize assets on it. Probably just sort of speak to that, and again, given that people will be listening here as to why they should use Ravencoin, I think there couldn't be anyone better than to hear from you, Tron, from that perspective.
Sure. Yeah, happy to talk about it. So I think one of the big advantages of Ravencoin over like an ERC20 token on Ethereum, you get a little bit better provenance. So on an ERC20 token, you get a contract ID, which is basically 40 hex characters. We actually ran into this early on of people trying to spoof that. So I was part of T0, and actually the T0 token itself, somebody created one fake one and tried to front run the launch of T0 by putting in, basically saying their site was the launch, and because it's just a 40-character hex string, people couldn't, with a name that could be duplicated, they could say it was a T0 token. That became a problem, so they were trying to spoof it. And so one of the things we wanted to do with that was have this DNS-like system, so you create a domain name that was, that's yours, that belongs to you. And then we used all uppercase when you create a main token. So it's easier to get rid of things where the lowercase I looks like, or lowercase L looks like an uppercase I, and things like that. Other spoof techniques kind of from the spam world. So that was one of the things we tried to do. The other one is we built in the ability to map your token to IPFS data, which is immutable. And the reason it's immutable is because the hash of the information, and the information can be whatever you want. You're not limited. You can do a whole folder full of stuff. You can do a file, a PDF. You can do a text document. You can do a movie. It doesn't really matter. Or a file with all of them, or a folder rather with all of them. But once it gets hashed, that becomes its name or identifier on the network. And the hash is the name, and so the name is the content. What that does is and then that hash goes into the chain when you create your token. So your unique name that you've reserved, let's say Bob, whatever, you created this token, and then you can attach data to it that it can't be tampered with. And so that gives a little bit more certainty for some projects that you can put documents that represent your actual property deed documents and things like that, specifically for land. You can do, movies and 3D objects and AR, VR kind of stuff for AR and VR. So anyway, that was kind of one of the other elements that we had kind of built in to Bitcoin. And then from there, so that was kind of step one. Step two was when we found that there was some legal challenges, at least in the U.S., where in some cases, not all this isn't true for, let's say, tokenized art or something like that, fractionalized art, but it might be for something where you're doing equity, so perhaps the stuff that Jake's doing. And that is When you issue it, if you actually give the token to someone and they start trading it with others, the issuer is kind of bound to kind of keep it from trading potentially for 6 months or a year, kind of depending on how they issued it. And so we built in kind of this ability for that to trade in a subset, what we call as restricted assets. And this is the ability to create an asset that starts with a $sign and no other assets can. And that asset can be limited to trade only amongst people who are tagged the way you want them to be tagged. And those tags can represent different things like, these people are outside the U.S. or they've been KYC'd or they're accredited and things like that. So that was kind of step 2 that gave it kind of a leg up on some of the other technologies that ERCs were trying to do or Ethereum was trying to do with a thing called whitelisting, which gets really, really, really bad, really, really, really fast with the gas fees if you're whitelisting everybody, because it has to kind of search through that whitelist and add a lot of data to the Ethereum chain for every whitelisted every person that's going to use your token. So those are kind of the two things. And then also, just one other thing, it's really, really easy to create your tokens. I mean, you kind of download the software, sync it, and then just say, I want a new token, give it a unique name, how many you want, add the IPFS data if you want it, decide whether you can issue more or not, and hit go, and that's it. And it costs 500 Raven, which right now is pretty cheap, like $10-15.
That's right. And actually, just on that point, they in terms of how they use the tokenizing asset, actually, Jake he's actually put a pin up. Jake, do you want to speak to that in terms of your process from tokenizing perspective?
Yeah, sure. So I've tokenized, I've created a lot of tokens that exist on the Ravencoin blockchain. I've done some NFTs, done a couple of main assets, only a few sub-assets. Sub-assets are basically built on main assets, and there can be up to 21 billion of them. And then the one restricted asset that I built for RenewalBlocks. I've also helped another prospective LLC mint their security tokens or their restricted asset on the blockchain. But the process, I can vouch that it's the easiest thing I've ever done in terms of blockchain, whether it's learning how something works or basically executing an action. And now I'm so comfortable with doing it, I'm comfortable teaching others how to do it properly and making sure that they are making the right decisions when creating their tokens, such as not minting your token with 8 decimal places right away because you can't take those away, or making sure that they're not minting too much because, again, you can't take those away. And the reason you can't take those tokens or decimal places away is because of the immutability of the Ravencoin blockchain. If you were to give someone 0.1 of your token and then in the future you realize, you know what, I don't want decimal places on this token, and you take that away, that's, you're taking away their 0.1. You can't do that. So I make sure that when I'm teaching people this stuff, that they know the proper ways of minting the tokens, whether it's a main asset, sub-asset. The unique assets are very easy. You don't need a sub-asset to create a unique asset. You just need the main asset. The unique assets are like super cheap right now. They're always super cheap. It's 5 Ravencoin, which is less than 10 cents at the current price per token. And I made about 1,500 of those. The process is again, very easy. And what's nice about those is you can't reissue those. So whether these unique assets represent things, like art, or maybe a contract, a legal contract that is linked to IPFS. That IPFS hash is always available on that token, so no one can go ahead and change the IPFS. Now, the difference between the unique assets and other assets is you can make other assets, or leave them, reissuable. And what that means is you can reissue the token, which means
You right there, Jake? You just got turned off. Maybe you're getting out of the car in between.
Yeah, I think just lost it.
We'll come back to you, Jake. Jake actually has pinned, as I said, he has pinned a video of him actually minting on the blockchain.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, back on.
Okay, cool. Yep. Sorry, I connected to my Wi-Fi on accident. Where was I? What was the last thing you guys heard?
Yeah, so basically, you were saying that in terms of the reissue, can you reissue the tokens?
Oh, yeah, that's right. So with main assets and sub-assets and restricted assets, you can leave those assets reissuable, which means you can change the IPFS hash. And this is important in case you're updating products or updating certain things that are linked to your tokens through IPFS. But for unique assets, like I was saying, for like the contract example, you can't reissue that IPFS. So there's no way that the person that issued the token can say, actually, this is the new contract. This is the one that we signed, and then you'd be screwed over. So I like unique assets. There's a lot of use cases for unique assets in terms of not being able to reissue IPFS. But so about the restricted asset stuff, the learning process was a big learning curve for me, how to do that, because there's only been 30 of them, I think, created on the blockchain so far. And the documentation for creating it, I could only find maybe two sources, and one was an article by Jaraz. He's like a developer for Raven. He's a really smart guy. And I know I read some of Tron's articles about restricted assets and the reasons for each piece of a restricted asset minting process. So I felt, after learning all of that, and I did some practicing on the testnet, I was able to film myself minting the RenewableBlock security tokens live. One, for transparency, and two, it was a really good teaching moment, because I don't know if anyone's actually filmed themselves minting a restricted asset before, and it's something that needs to be done more in terms of showing people how easy it is, because we always say, oh, it's super easy to mint these assets. It's like takes 2 seconds. Well, let's show them. So I recorded it. It took a little longer because I like to talk a lot. If you can't tell, I love talking about this stuff. But in reality, the process takes only a few blocks. 1 block to mint the main asset, 1 block to mint the qualifier asset, 1 block to tag the qualifier asset address, and then 1 block to mint the restricted assets to the tagged address. So how many blocks was that? I think it was 4 blocks. So technically, it could take 4 minutes to do this. I just like to talk a lot. So the video that's pinned up top, it's longer, but in reality, it could be a lot shorter. And I think anyone in here who has never minted on Ravencoin before, you should watch it. And I use the Ravencore wallet for minting those tokens. It can be downloaded onto a desktop, and then you have to sync the wallet to the blockchain. It takes a few hours depending on your internet connection. But that is a really good wallet. It's got a ton of functionality to it. NFTs, security tokens, main assets, which are basically your domain names, sub assets, and stuff like that.
Fantastic, Jake. That's great. With one of the big things, it's around trust of the blockchain, because basically when we start talking about real estate, there is obviously a huge element of trust in terms of trusting people, trusting the chain, and obviously, again, this is something that obviously it's a new world in terms of where people can actually access real estate on the blockchain and be able to buy real estate anywhere in the world, including Australia. So there's a huge element of trust in terms of what happens if the chain, something goes wrong with the chain and what have you. But I'll go to LSJ in terms of the trust. I know LSJ is very big in terms of, I've heard LSJ speak, and he writes a lot of content around the trust element of a blockchain in terms of all the elements that go with it. But one of the things with the trust side of things is that people have been, we're minting properties, the BRIK wallet is 2.6 mil. So when I talk dollars, I'm talking US dollars, and we've got projects maybe 3 mil, 3.5 mil of people I'm speaking to. They're talking about doing 150 mil, 80 mil projects to be minted on the blockchain. So I guess that it's a massive trust issue from an issuer perspective. Is a massive trust issue, and also from the token buyers is also a huge trust issue. So, LSJ, when we start talking about the trust of a blockchain, and obviously when people are researching in terms of what blockchain they should be tokenizing their real estate tokens on, can you sort of speak to that, LSJ, from that trust aspect?
Yeah, well, I suppose the place that I kind of always start is defining what people kind of expect, because what blockchains are there for needs to be really clear in people's heads. So it's kind of worth getting that over. So blockchains are there just to transact, to be a record of what people have done. That is at its core what it is. There are some blockchains out there that try and go over and above that and do extra special things that get complicated. But that kind of distracts from what it was intended as, which is a really good ledger. To agree who owns what, and that is the point of blockchain. It's the point of Bitcoin, to know who owns how much Bitcoin and what address specifically. And the wallet software, the blockchain, because the blockchain is just code, the various nodes monitor and make sure the blockchain or the ledger stays accurate and follows the rules. I suppose that being defined, it's just that is the truth. So if you're looking for truth, a blockchain is a really good way to do it. But there are different styles of blockchain. So there's Bitcoin style, which is using individual addresses, and then when Bitcoin sends or receives things, Bitcoin specifically, because that's all it can be used for really, unless you get fancy with it, you get and receive Bitcoin into your personal private address, and you own it if you control that address. Nobody else can touch it, move it, do anything with it. And that is a basic principle, if you like, and that builds trust. When I go to and look at other blockchain technologies, like Ethereum is a really good example. It's one of the blockchains that is pushing the boundary a bit more. So it's moved away kind of from the ledger, just being the ledger, to trying to add a bit more value by increasing complication a little bit. So they used a little bit of a different model. So what they do is they still have their base token, like Bitcoin, being Bitcoin. So they have Ether. Now, Ether can move around just like Bitcoin does in the Bitcoin addresses, except it's obviously an Ethereum address. And it's really straightforward. You send your Ethereum, you get your Ethereum in your address. Job done, really good. But Ethereum introduced something really special, which is smart contracts. And what a smart contract does is basically allows you to issue a smart contract. And a smart contract is a new type of address, basically. And that address does the fancy stuff. So people can put code into that address, so that address can then do whatever it's programmed to do. Some people use it for tokens, and other people use it for all sorts of different calculations that you can use code for. So its application is massive, but one of the primary use cases that people have used Ethereum for, smart contracts, is tokens. They make tokens and use it as a token platform. But with the way that Ethereum is designed, with having all the tokens, so when you make a smart contract, all the tokens that are associated with that smart contract only live in that code. So you can't send them any out of that code. It's not like you can send that code to somewhere else, to someone else's address, because it won't be in their address. It'll only... The way they do it is they take people's addresses who want to perhaps get involved, own a token, and they reference that address in the code, and that indicates ownership. So they've created their code to work that way. And it works really well that way for them, because the smart contract code, they can then manipulate all the tokens and shuffle them about everyone and do all kinds of fancy algorithmic stuff. I'm not going to go into that. That's just what they use it for. The horrible thing about it is that because the smart contract controls everyone's tokens, if something goes wrong, it goes badly wrong. And it affects everybody, because everyone's tokens are in that smart contract address. Also, that kind of applies to if there's any issues with the coding, every smart contract is unique and has its own coding potentially. They get standard templates and stuff, and there's places that provide standard templates, but they should be unique to serve whatever purpose it is, whatever purpose a smart contract's for. And yeah, so it can be really, really special, but you've got that problem where tokens live all in one place, can't move to a different address. And so one of the things obviously that Tron mentioned as well earlier, an issue with gas and whitelisting. Whitelisting would potentially happen in an address, a smart contract address, that would get bigger. And every time anyone used that information, it would cost gas to run the program. So it's you can see why gas costs so much, because they've got so much extra work to deal with, because there's unique whitelists for different projects. Everyone's got their own whitelist. It could be built into a smart contract token, but it could be separate because if it's big enough to warrant it. But it's just not very agile. So Ravencoin is different because it's built on Bitcoin's model, and it uses each token that gets minted or made or issued by an issuer actually has it stays in the issuer's address, or whatever address that issuer owns. And then whenever it moves, it can get moved or transferred to someone else's address. So the ownership is much better. If you get sent a token on Ravencoin, it's not a reference to say that in that token smart contract, you have an IOU to get that token. You actually have the token in your address, and you're the only person that can move it. That, to me, is really special, because that is far better ownership. Because if you trust that the person who's made the deal, agreement, or whatever it is, that the token holder, there's always going to be that real world side of it, where people want to be trustworthy generally if they're a professional business, but some people don't. So blockchain doesn't make people honest, but it can be a really good ledger. So it's and smart contracts sometimes add a little bit of ambiguity to who owns what, and that can be tricky for people to kind of track and find out where things go. So trust-wise, Ravencoin is a better option, because when you own something, you've got much better ownership than smart contract platforms. For that reason. So I'll stop there, because I feel like I've been waffling for a while.
That's okay. We appreciate your inner depths in terms of the Ravencoin chain, and obviously we have huge respect for you in terms of your knowledge and also the content you write on. So again, that's why I threw to you to the trust perspective, because I think that's a critical piece of the puzzle when we start talking about what blockchain to tokenize real estate on. So I appreciate that your input. I think one of the hardest things to try and explain to people when I'm talking about that, they ask me what chain should I be tokenizing on, and I'll start telling them my experience, and again, it's one of those things that usually say, well, Ravencoin, what's Ravencoin? Never heard of Ravencoin, and you sort of bring the conversation back to a couple. It started in terms of the Bitcoin fundamentals, and everybody knows Bitcoin, and basically is fundamentals used from the Bitcoin, and then basically the Ravencoin was purposely built for tokenizing assets. So I guess before I go to try and sort of probe them on this, we just got to be conscious that we've got people that are listening here today, and also people will be listening to this recording, that it come from people that are coming into the blockchain for the first time, that are planning out in terms of tokenizing real estate, to the people who have actually been around from day one in terms of blockchain, in terms of Bitcoin, and obviously have a huge and high knowledge, and everybody else in between. So when we start talking about in terms of the identity of Ravencoin, and people are saying, we've never heard of it. I guess that, Tron, you probably have experienced this many times in your talks out there, in some of the seminars you've been to, where you've got up and talked about Ravencoin. You probably get some puzzled looks on people's faces in terms of we've never heard of Ravencoin. So how do you actually sort of start that conversation, or try to articulate in terms of Ravencoin to sort of probably more to the person who's now coming into blockchain for the first time, was very new to blockchain?
Sure, yeah. So that is an issue, and the reason it's an issue is because Ravencoin is an open source project and not a company. So Bitcoin has an amazing brand because it started really early, so it's somewhat unique in the space. But then you have things like Ethereum and EOS and Phantom and things like that. A lot of those are companies, and so they, when they created those, they kept a lot of the tokens. Meaning the original developers, the original issuers, kept a lot of the tokens. They weren't issued the way Bitcoin was issued, which gave them a kind of a treasury to kind of promote with it. But it also comes with, which is great. I mean, I kind of wish we had the same thing, except that it kind of puts you in a different bucket legally. To have, if we had created this and kept a whole bunch of Raven kind of in a bucket for the treasury, puts us in a different bucket legally. And so when you hear of things like Ripple and EOS and things like that, the SEC has kind of gone after many of those. And so they have to use some of that treasury to kind of defend it, because when they issued it, it was kind of dependent on the efforts of others and things like that, and the expectation of profit. Whereas Raven was all mined into existence, so it was a really fair launch. But jumping back to your original question is people haven't heard of it, but that's the reason why, is because we don't have a large ad budget to kind of tell people about it. Hopefully this becomes, large enough, and with word of mouth, some of the projects, some of the other projects, likely will fail when their treasury runs out. But Ravencoin's kind of purposely designed to kind of stick around and just be, kind of have an economic model similar to Bitcoin that's mined into existence. And also to be proof of work similar to Bitcoin. So I think it'll have some more legs going forward. But yeah, that's the reason people don't know about it. So I try to tell people about it on things like this and podcasts and things like that. But there kind of is no marketing department. So
that's great, Tim. And I guess as a collective, this is always where we're playing our part in terms of trying to bring awareness to it. I know there's been some marketing funds as a community to be able to promote it out there. I know that's I know LSJ's got the Raven Wall as one of the marketing pools to be able to fund different projects from a marketing perspective. And I guess this is where it's very unique. It's a very decentralized blockchain that basically the community is driving the blockchain to the direction it wants to, with obviously the user guys that in terms of maintaining the blockchain, but letting the community take it in the direction that it wants to. And I think that's quite unique in terms of the Ravencoin blockchain. But Tron, in terms of the, again, I think probably from an issuer perspective, and we start talking, as you know, we've got 10 properties in the first year coming on the Ravencoin, and so and then we've got 20 more in the second year and so forth over the next 10-year vision in terms of what we're doing. I guess when you start looking at it from an initial perspective, and you've got other bigger projects, some of my colleagues that look at the $180 million projects at a time, I guess scalability is obviously a question that we've always got in terms of this. Well, what it was when I was obviously looking into the Ravencoin chain over the next 10 years, what's its capabilities, what's the scalability, can it handle? And I guess this is a question from our perspective. It'd be great for you to speak to that in terms of from a scalability perspective on the Ravencoin blockchain.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So we have about 20 times the capacity of Bitcoin. So it's right now we're not even touching scalability right now, but it doesn't have infinite scalability, but it has really good scalability at the moment. There are some things that could be done to it, with the community's permission and things like that to bump it up from there. But we're a long way from needing that. It does have a similar mechanism to Bitcoin to gate it. So it does have gas fees if that ever does become a problem. If people are using it for very, very low value things, so sort of spam like things, then they may get priced out. But I think we're a long way from that. I think we have these tokens don't. They don't move around a ton, the equity tokens, things like that. So I think we have a lot of room to grow. We're nowhere near touching scalability at the moment.
That's great. We just touched on gas fees. I mean, at the moment, whether you're transferring a property token on the Ravencoin blockchain or whether you're transferring an NFT, the same application applies in terms of gas fees. And I think I transferred an NFT. I think when some of the gifts I gave away during the week, I think it was 0.001 cent. I think it is for. I think there was a transaction of. I think the value was $10 or $20, whatever the NFT value was. But so the gas fees, I mean, regardless of value, right, in terms of transaction fees at the moment, it's what, 0.0001, I think, from last time I saw.
Yeah. Right now they're very, very, very cheap.
Yeah.
So it's great for moving things around at the moment.
Absolutely. And probably from a wallet perspective, I know obviously we've got a few different wallets coming on board. I know at the moment we've got the Ravencoin core wallet, which I use it as well as the Mango Farm wallet, and there's a few ones, the Moon ones coming up as well. So I guess there's probably there's been a bit of confusion about the Ravencoin wallet as to whether it's still valid. Is it something that's continuing to go forward? Is it something that's going to be decommissioned? So probably, I mean, you're probably closer to the action from that perspective. Can you just sort of touch on that?
Yes. So the Raven Core wallet for Windows, Mac, and Linux, that is the core basis of Ravencoin. So that will continue to go forward. That one is the one that creates the emergent network that is Ravencoin. The mobile wallets for Android and iOS are still out there. They're a little long in the tooth at the moment. But there are Mango Farm and Moon Tree will probably be, for most people, the wallet of choice, just because it'll be fast, quick, easy. The iOS and Android wallet, however, have one specific advantage. They're called SPB wallets. So when they connect, they are actually connecting to the Ravencoin network directly and syncing directly with it. So there is no third-party hosted server and things like that's necessary. They connect to one thing only, and that is to get the price, and that's just so that you can look on there and say, oh, I have 1,000 Raven and it's worth this many dollars or euros and things like that. Other than that, they actually connect to the emergent network, to all the nodes specifically, and actually do kind of a lightweight sync. So they actually go through all the blocks looking for the transactions for the address that creates. So those will probably stick around. I actually don't want to get rid of them, even though, once these other wallets are kind of out there and pretty well, established and debugged, I would probably recommend for most people to use those, the new ones.
Fantastic. Aleixo?
Just following on from what Tron mentioned there, one of the most important things, just kind of like just going back to basics for a second, when you first get a Ravencoin wallet, however you choose to do it, the way the new ones are set up, you get a 12-word seed, and it's really important to get that and write it down, because all the information that we were given before is based on really good ownership and you protecting personally those 12 words, because that is the backup to whatever you keep in your Ravencoin wallet, your assets, your tokens, or your Raven. So I just thought that was really worth highlighting again to people who are listening, maybe in the future, but because whatever wallet you use, that's really important.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Write down those 12 words. A lot of times you're like, well, somebody gave me like $3 worth. That's not really worth my time to write it down and store it really safe. The problem is that people did that with Bitcoin, and then the prices doubled, tripled, 1,000x or whatever, and then they had written down those seeds. They lose their phone, and they can't recover it. And this has happened specifically to a lot of people that I gave various crypto to, Bitcoin, Dash, and Raven. So just 100% agree. Just write down those 12 words and store it like you would store super important documents, like deeds to your house or something like that. Keep them in a safe or safety deposit box or something like that.
That's important. I guess from holding the tokens perspective, obviously there's two ways: either you custodian your own property tokens, or basically you're non-custodian. So basically, probably from, again, if I can share our experience, is basically on our BRIK property tokens platform. We want to make sure that it was easy for people, so people coming into blockchain and they're used to having on normal web and having password subscriptions to different platforms on the websites. We wanted to sort of have that same experience in the first couple of years. So basically, when people actually go on and actually subscribe to our BRIK properties tokens platform, they subscribe to the KYC. Then they buy, say for example, the property tokens on there, but we actually custodian the tokens on their behalf. So people can buy and sell on the secondary market on the platform, but the tokens are kept on our platform, so they don't go off chain. So we thought that was critical, especially in the beginning, to making sure people don't feel like if they lose their keys, they lose their tokens, the property tokens, because properties are kept for a very long time. Properties kept indefinitely. It's important that they stay part of our community. So we made a decision the first 2 years to actually custodian their tokens on the platform rather than taking away. 2 years' time, we'll review it and basically make a decision where people's understanding and knowledge and comfort to all things as to whether they can then take them off chain to custodian their own property tokens. So again, it's a horses for courses. That's the approach we've taken, because I think we're so early, and especially in real estate tokenization, there's obviously massive importance that people place on real estate property. So I think we want to make sure people have comfort in terms when they hold in their property tokens. That doesn't matter what happens. If they lose their password, we just give them a new password. And I think we found that's really critical in terms of our experience and talking to different people, especially people coming into the blockchain for the first time. But yeah, look, it's a journey. And you always got to keep reviewing the journey. And we've said we'll look at it 2 years' time. But yeah, I totally agree in terms of that. Having the wallet, the RavenCoin wallet, is actually quite critical. Because again, people actually start sharing some assets with you. They might want to give something with you, so all of a sudden you start accumulating quite a few assets within your RavenCoin wallet. And it's critical to write those down, as Tron is saying. Put it in your safe. Write it down. Put it in your safe, or whatever you keep your documents. So, but yeah, look, what do I want to do? We might just open up for any questions. If people want a mic, we'll give them a mic. But while we wait for people to come up, Jake, is anything that you wanted to throw in the mix in terms of on the points?
Something that was on my mind earlier before the space started that I just wanted to touch on at one point is the way people look at RavenCoin and Bitcoin. Something this has really gotten into my head recently based on the Loomis, Senator Loomis, or is it Lemus? I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, that crypto bill, where they were talking about commodities versus securities. And it got me thinking of how we should be treating RavenCoin and Bitcoin and any other fairly mined cryptos that have a specific use case to them. So I like to view Raven as this. It's a scarce asset such as land, and this asset is able to be built upon and is used to build. It's not unlimited. So now, why am I saying this? A lot of people focus on price. A lot of people like to talk about the price of Raven, but honestly, that's really just the price of being able to use it and use the network. And for people that buy it, they're using their dollars. People that mine their hardware and paying for electricity. There's different ways to accumulate this asset to build on this network and build on this blockchain. And I just like to view it as that kind of asset. The price matters for traders and people that are looking to profit off of holding this asset. People have done this for decades and decades and decades on countless assets, right? There's speculation on everything. But in terms of building, it's not like the code is changing. There's a consensus to keep the code the way it is. It works. Burning Raven works for preventing unlimited asset feedback on the network. So that's kind of been how, whenever I talk to people about it, that's how I try to speak about it right now. I almost try never to focus on price. Obviously, recently it's hard to avoid talking about price. But, if you're ever feeling down in the dumps about, the value of your Raven coin in terms of fiat, just double check your node, double check if the code's changed, or, there's people trying to change the code or something like that. And you're probably going to notice that nothing's changing. You're still able to build. You're still able to tokenize things the way you have been for many years now. So, yeah, that's my closing point.
That's fantastic, Jack. That's fantastic. Tron, I'll put you on the spot, Tron. We always like to have somebody, well, especially I guess speak that comes on. We always like to get their definition of what is real estate tokenization, and obviously our session's name. In say a minute, what's your definition? What is real estate tokenization? I'll leave the best to last. Have that definition come from you.
So the way I look at it, this is so if you wanted to buy, so the advantage to doing it is that if you wanted to buy real estate, it's usually an all or nothing kind of operation, right? You either come up with enough money or a loan or whatever to buy an entire house or building or something like that. Tokenization gives us the ability to fractionalize that real estate, whether it's productive land. I mean, it could be productive land that has oil, trees, timber, etc. It can be buildings, office buildings, or rentable real estate, Airbnbs, and things like that, and tokenize them. And that allows everyone, especially under like Reg CF, and then of course in other countries or whatever, it's not quite as onerous as the U.S. To participate in just kind of one of the greatest wealth creation things out there. So people can buy a fraction of the real estate and participate, right? So this is real estate that's going to be rented and used and paid for, and they can participate in that. And I think that opens things up for people, and especially if you lower those barriers so that you can participate at whatever level that makes sense for you, right? It could be, tokenization. The tokens don't care, right? They can be divisible down to 1/100 millionth of a piece. So you could literally fractionize a house into a billion pieces and have them be like fractions of a penny. A little bit impractical, but definitely possible. But setting it so that like a token is $1 or $10 or something like that, so you're buying one small fraction of productive real estate, I think is useful, and I think it's useful in fixing some of the problems that we have currently in the U.S. and other countries, with this kind of like wealth gap. So now you can participate in this type thing at smaller levels. And I think it's a great thing.
That's a great definition, Tron. That's very clear, the definition you just provided. And again, I hope people listening to that. And again, this is the message we try to get out there in terms of anybody from all corners of the world can now actually access real estate in any country. So again, this is the game changer. This is the future of real estate for people that never had the ability to, for people that in developing countries wasn't even a thought. But now, and even people just in developed countries, we all got different challenges. And again, now we've got the ability to buy, real estate on the blockchain. And again, it's a game changer from a wealth perspective, as Tron mentioned. LSJ, any closing points from you before we start wrapping up?
Nothing wise and intelligence. The only thing really that I would just add to what's already been said is that one of the core fundamentals of Bitcoin and Ravencoin is the decentralization and things that help build on that. So the proof of work mining is absolutely essential, and the price is relevant to that to an extent, but it's not the main factor. It's only relevant from the point of view that it secures the network and it helps balance the equation, if you like, to miners so that they receive something for the work that they're doing. I think that's really valuable, and Ravencoin does encourage that, and I think will continue to do that with the choices that it's made in the past, with using Corpal and encouraging anyone who's got a graphics card that anyone can go and buy if they want to, over the counter, local to them, There's been some recent availability that's unusual, but people can now do that and mine Ravencoin. And when they're not gaming on their computer at home, mine and help the decentralization of Ravencoin and protect the chain and protect the record, the ledger that we trust is accurate, because everyone can see what's going on. And I just encourage everyone to, if you haven't looked into it, just have a look into it and spend some time, because it can be really, really eye-opening what can be improved.
That's great, Aleixo. Thank you for that. Tron, closing points from you?
One, thanks everybody for coming to this. Thanks everybody who's listening after the fact. Ravencoin was built specifically for tokenizing anything, and real estate's one of those. Equities another. You can tokenize hours of your time. Really, it's you can think of it kind of like getting a counterfeit-proof bag of poker chips, right? Each one worth something. But you decide what they're worth, what they can be redeemed for, and they can be transferred around the world in a minute or so, and have finality within about an hour. And then also each one of those tokens can link to a document or a folder full of documents about what those tokens, or think of them as like poker chips, are worth. And in the case of real estate fractionalization, that document would tell you what each token would be worth, and who would redeem it, who would redeem it for that value. So that's what Ravencoin is built for. It's really good at it, and thanks for taking the time to learn about it or listen to this after the fact.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tron, for those closing points. Again, as we sort of wrap up, probably some things, there's some mentions that I've got here. We do have as a community, we have a Braveland event on the first Saturday of the month, so at 4 p.m. This is US Eastern Standard Time, so that's there'll be some links there the next couple of days for the next one. So again, this is where the Ravencoin community gets together, where people actually share what's happening with their projects, or whether it's NFTs, property, music, mining projects like Jake's and so forth, movies. So it's quite a showcasing our diverse of the blockchain, the Ravencoin blockchain, in terms of the different types of projects being minting on. So again, please join us. If you're listening, please join us. It is a software download that once you've downloaded the software, because it is very memory hungry, so it can be done on PC or Mac. Download the software, then you'll be able to join and create your avatar. So again, it's a great community. It's actually a Ravencoin campus funded by the Ravencoin blockchain, in terms of that's maintained by the Ravencoin blockchain. So it's think of a university campus. That's all the facilities, and but even more with a beach. So we usually have it on the beach. So it's Braveland's Gems on the Beach is what we call it. So please join us, and a great way to keep updated in terms of what's happening with each one's projects or projects that are coming up. And have a bit of fun as well. We have a concert at the end, which SOS, which is actually in the room. He provides the performance, the music performance on stage with his fantastic music. No, it doesn't do movies. It does music. So a great performance from SOS every month there. So we really appreciate the time he puts into for the music that's provided there. And then there's a bit of dancing that's at the moment. LSJ and India have got the world champion dancing trophy at the moment. So come and challenge them. And there's some boats there. You can have some boat races as well, which India also has that title at the moment as the world champion boat racer. So give her a challenge. So we like to have a bit of fun at the same time. So, but also a special our thoughts are for the people out there who obviously in cryptos. Obviously, prices are at a very low price at the moment. The crypto market. So our thoughts go out to you. Stay positive. I always remind in terms of people that at the end of the day, just making sure you go back to your vision as to why you got into cryptos, why you bought specific crypto projects, as to why you're in them. Stick to the fundamentals as to why you're in it. There's going to be ups and downs, but you just got to stay focused in terms of why you're in it. Just to go back to your vision. in terms of everybody. I encourage all to always put in place a vision, whether it's your crypto portfolio, your wealth, whether it's your property tokens, whether it's your property, real estate property, where's your wealth portfolio in general. You need to have a vision in terms of where you're going, so I should have that reminder in terms of what is the end goal, in terms of where you're going, because again, if you haven't got, if you don't know where you're going, then how do you know when you actually have arrived? So it's important to have that roadmap, that vision, outlining whether it's 5 years, 10 years. You need to have that. We practice what we preach from a BRIK perspective. So hence why we put it out there in terms of our roadmap for the properties over the next 10 years. So I think it's critical. Because it makes you reminded when there's shit days, like sometimes at the moment where the market is, the crypto market, when there's shit days, you can go back to your vision and remind you of your journey. So again, our thoughts are for those people who are going through some bad times in terms of the crypto market at the moment. So stay positive, keep focused, and keep building. And I think as a reminder, keep building regardless of the price. If you're a project like ours, you've got to basically keep focused. From a property perspective, it doesn't impact us because at the end of the day, property is property. Property still has its value. It doesn't go down in price. So I guess from a property tokens perspective, it has no impact in terms of what we're doing. And so I guess that's something to note. But yeah, look, just to keep it under that hour, I really appreciate Tron for coming on today. Really appreciate your time and taking time away from your travels at the moment. Really appreciate you coming on board and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. And obviously the early beginnings, and obviously trying to sort of give this knowledge to people that are researching what blockchains are tokenized, their real estate tokens on. So I hope they got a lot of insights from you in terms of your journey, in terms of why you started with your team, the RavenCoin blockchain, and really appreciate your time, Tron. LSJ, really appreciate you coming on board and sharing your deep knowledge as well of the blockchain, the RavenCoin blockchain, and again, you are one of those people that we always go to when it comes to the nitty-gritties of the RavenCoin blockchain. And also thank you to my co-host, Jake. Really appreciate, I know you're on the road today. I really appreciate you juggling you around today. And we'll close it up. And again, stay safe. Have a fantastic evening, morning, afternoon, depending where you're at. And again, keep listening to this weekly session that we have. Great people come on board as a special guest to keep sharing the word, keep making people aware what's happening in terms of real estate tokenization. Take care, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Bye for now.